Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Topics this week include the possibility of e-cigarettes for prisoners, the continuing debate over the future of the old courthouse in Ramsey, and the island's minimum wage rates. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Which air links are the most important to Isle of Man passengers? The loss of Citywing's Blackpool route means it enter passenger flights into and out of the town's Squires Gate Airport. And that's a bit annoying to me at the moment. I have to say, in fairness, it's yonks since I've actually flown to Blackpool, but I could do with having a route there at the moment because I need to go over to Blackpool for something. Citywing was the only commercial operator to retain a passenger route when the airport reopened following a temporary closure in 2014. Other routes operated by Citywing were to Belfast, Glasgow, Gloucester and Newcastle. It was announced yesterday, good news, that Eastern Airways had stepped in to replace flights to Newcastle and Belfast. But which air routes are the most important for people in the Isle of Man? Is it important that we've got a link to Blackpool? I would suspect that it is. It's not the best place for some onward destinations, but it's not bad. You can get to most places in the north of England, certainly from Blackpool. Posted on Facebook this morning, a passenger has managed to contact Eastern Airways this morning to rebook flights. Original flights with Citywing were £105. She's now to pay Eastern Airlines £432. Presumably for the same thing, and no chance of a refund by Citywing as she paid by debit card. Right, well, that's a bit of a difference, isn't it? I don't know. I did see the news article about Eastern taking over, and the Belfast route, I think it's 99 quid each way, which struck me as a huge amount of money for what must be, a 15 or 20 minute flight. But then I thought, well, yeah, it's all very well, as deciding it's expensive, but it's not a particularly profitable job running a small feeder airline like that, or a commuter airline. So maybe what they're doing is that they're going in at that price, and if they find that numbers drop off, then they'll either reduce the price to get more bums on seats, or they'll increase the price to cover the shortfall. So maybe that's just a sort of a stab in the dark to say, well, can we make money at this? And will people stand it? I don't know. I don't know what the business model is, to be honest. Stu, did I just hear on the flight information that the first flight by Eastern this morning has been cancelled? Apparently so, yes. This text in, no wonder the baggage handlers are being sacked at the airport. The Dublin flight this morning, it took over 35 minutes to get luggage on the carousel. Well, you're presuming it's the baggage handler's fault. In fairness, always trying to be fair. It might be somebody else's fault. It might have been rostering's gone wrong, or it might have had a breakdown on that little truck that they use, or it could have been any number of things other than the baggage handlers. But if I were you, I would be absolutely incensed by that, because this is just another example of how tedious and disagreeable scheduled flying is these days. A short flight like Dublin, that's about 20 minutes in the air as well, isn't it? Standing there at the carousel for 35 minutes waiting for the baggage to do the last 200 yards from the aeroplane I'd just be incensed by that, so I can understand how you feel about it, but let's not jump to the conclusion that it's the baggage handler's fault. It's likely to be no more straightforward flights down to watch the rugby at Gloucester for me, Stu. I fear getting an alternative carry to Gloucester won't be easy, says Ian. No, that was, in some ways, it was the nice thing about Citywing, and before that Manx too, that they were doing sort of slightly different routes, weren't they, to other people. Did they do Oxford at one stage as well? I can't remember. Now then, Biggles, why don't you set up your own airline? Well, because the way to make $1 million out of running an airline is to start with 10 million, I think. A pilot of your undoubtable skills and the government with 50 million quid to frutter away on new business ventures, it sounds like the perfect solution, young Parder. Happy Monday, Frank. I've missed you like a hole in the head. I think it's a very brave it strikes me that it's a really, really competitive and difficult field to be in, running an airline. And we all want, cheap flights to wherever we want to go at the times that we want to go. The reality is that it's virtually impossible to do that, I think, unless you've got a huge amount of footfall, huge numbers of passengers on a route. And even then, I don't think that the margins are that great. Time to spare, go by air, says one of our contributors. Well, that's kind of the way it is. And it's awful, isn't it? An airline, especially a place like the Isle of Man, it ought to be like a bus service. You ought to turn up and get on it and go somewhere. But I mean, and I appreciate why we've got to have security and stuff, but I mean, it's just so disagreeable. Queue up, wait, go through security, queue up, wait. It's just horrible. I hate it. In fact, I try not to do it, which is a bit of a problem because my 3 daughters and 4 grandchildren all live across, and I think it's probably about 18 months since I've been to see them. They came over to see me last year, but it's probably 18 months since I've been off Ireland. Now, part of me says, well, that's why I live on the Isle of Man, because I don't want to be getting off the island all the time. But there are a lot of people who need to, either through work or family commitments or whatever. So which routes would you like to see sorted out first? Let's go to the lines. We've got Dave on, our Ballasalla correspondent. Hello, Dave.
Stuart, we're all the while asking for people to come up and set up business in the island. And businessmen, particularly, they're just not going to come with an unsteady transport system like we've got. I mean, these people who are running their businesses, they want to be assured that they can get on and off the island.
Yes.
And when they need to go.
Yeah, but I mean, let's face it, Dave, and I take your point, but surely the important routes are Liverpool, Manchester and London, and as long as we've got those boxed off, then they're going to cater for probably 90% of the business users, aren't they?
Well, if that's the case, then they need to lower the fares, don't they?
What, for places like Newcastle and Belfast?
Well, I mean, you can go online to Flybe, and you can go to book, and you can watch the price of the ticket going up and up and up. Business people are not going to come anywhere, be it in the UK or the Isle of Man, unless we have a reliable transport system.
Yes.
The transport system is key.
Yeah.
It's key to everything. It's key to bringing in food. It's key to getting people in and off the island, and that's where we've got to look at. We've got to look at reliability, and we've got to look at being able to get people on and off when they want to go.
Do you want to go halves on a war surplus Hercules, Dave?
Yeah, that's about right.
Well, they call passengers self-loading cargo anyway, don't they? So, you just strap them on to one of those things and have, like, deck chairs down the side of a Hercules. It'd be fantastic. Nobody'd mind.
I mean, that's we do have Hercules coming in here now and again.
Yeah, we do. Fantastic aeroplanes.
I mean, but it's not that, Stuart. If you're asking business people, particularly, you've been in business.
Sure.
Time is money.
Yeah.
And you've got to make money to keep the people employed, keep yourself employed, keep the business turning. If you're not able to get to a place as and when you need to be, it's a non-starter.
Yep, it's absolutely true. All right, Dave, thank you very much indeed for your call. If anybody else agrees or disagrees with Dave, then get in touch. I would suspect, and I don't know if this is true, Dave, I would suspect that most business travellers aren't necessarily terribly price sensitive. If you need to get here, then the price, I guess, generally isn't going to be important. I'd like to see the Southampton route started again. It was a sad day when they stopped that. It was an ideal airport for down south. Okay, I mean, I always thought that was a strange destination, Southport, but I think it was popular with a lot of people, so... but clearly not enough. Again, I would suspect, and I don't know if I'm right or not, that any route that has got enough passengers on it on a regular basis will be maintained. It's the ones where you've got big aeroplanes with very few people on them, even small aeroplanes with very few people on them, that they just can't sustain. Airlinks themselves are more than sufficient. No other island our size would have so many different destinations. It's the prices that are the issue. On the whole, the scandalous Eastern Airways should have been told where to go, thinking they can charge £99 one way for a 20-minute flight. More fool the people who pay it. Well, you can say that, but if I wanted to go to Belfast tomorrow afternoon and I knew it was going to cost me £99, I'd kind of work that into the plan. as will most people. It's like, the old thing about you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Maybe the fact that Citywing was doing heavily discounted prices compared to that, it's only now that people are going to start to realise what a good deal they were. Also, EasyJet Luton link won't last 5 minutes as there isn't the demand for it. There are already 2 good London links. Okay, thank you. Stu, not defending Eastern, but they had to pay air passenger duty as they have more than 19 seats, and also the foot passenger cost on the steam packet is nearly £20 single. There you go. I mean, that puts it into context a little bit. And yes, I suppose that one of the benefits of Citywing was that the aeroplanes were small enough that they were able to get away with things in terms of cost, certainly. Air passenger duty, if it was fewer than 19 seats. I expect that landing fees were cheaper as well for the smaller aeroplanes, the Let 410s.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should prisoners be given access to e-cigarettes? Plans for a 6-month trial to allow prisoners to use the devices could move a step closer later this month. Tynwald's being asked to support reforms to the Custody Amendment Rules 2017. A 6-month trial will be carried out using specialist devices combating a rise in prisoners smoking substances such as banana peel, tea bags and in some cases hair. Ugh. It's still unclear as to when the trial period will begin. What do you think about this? Is it a sensible step, or should any smoking be stamped out altogether at the prison? Them's the rules. Should the rules be bent a little bit? Hi Stu, if prisoners are allowed to use e-cigs in government buildings, will that mean that all government workers are allowed to smoke them in all government buildings? If not, I feel this is victimisation. And that's from Steve the non-smoker. Well, very, very good point, Steve. Hey boy, what a fantastic idea to have e-cigs at the Derby prison. It'll stop any cigarette burns or ash getting onto the snooker table cloth. Morning, Frank. Offenders are in prison for a reason, and that is to protect the public from their criminal acts. Well, that's part of it. It's also a penalty, isn't it, to be incarcerated and away from your loved ones or whatever, and to lose your job and all the rest of it. There's also rehabilitation is part of it, so protecting the public is only part of it. But this should not take away a prisoner's human rights. If a prisoner wants to smoke, as long as it's at his own cost, then he should be allowed to, says Pat. Well, yeah, but like I said earlier on, why only prisoners? Why not the rest of us who want to use electronic cigarettes in government buildings and can't? That lady earns about 50 grand a year. It's an on-job, 20 is more than enough. How do you know? It just goes to show how our money is being wasted. It's tobacco barons who invented ciggies and got rich off the backs of people's addiction to nicotine. Why the need for cigs? Just stop. Oh, well, there we go. It's the Betty Ford solution to everything. So gambling addiction, domestic violence, drug addiction, booze, too much eating food and things like that. Just stop. It's that simple. Why did none of us think about that? Just stop doing it. Good. Well, there we go. The troubles of the world have all been sorted by that comment. Thank you so much. Let's go to the lines. We've got Andrew on with a point of view. Hello, Andrew.
Do you know you can actually get Manx Radio in Derby Jail now? For many years you couldn't get it.
Really?
Yeah, it was just Energy and Radio 2, I think it was.
All right.
Well, you can receive Manx Radio there now. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I went in there. I was in there before anybody else because I went there with my mum. I applied. Through a telephone number, and I had to walk around there before the Vicky Road crew, were transferred there. So I had a good look round. But at the moment, what is happening? The ones who decide to smoke, the young mischievous ones, really, they're putting wires together, getting a spark, and smoking kiwi fruit leaves.
Yeah, bananas and all sorts of things.
Bananas and or boiled nicotine patches. It's very well known. There's no secret about it. And then about 5 or 6 of them huddled together in one cell around the king roller and hope to get a little puff on it.
Yes.
The king of the wing.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm saying I know. I've been watching Orange is the New Black, so I think as far as American women's prisons are concerned, I'm fairly up to speed. But apart from that, I don't really know what goes on in jail.
Well, yes. But the worry I have, one thing, vapors said at high levels contain benzene and a few other chemicals, so they are potentially carcinogenous.
It depends. Hang on a second, because I was under the impression that all the e-liquid used that I've bought anyway, I've always checked the labels on it, and they contain water, nicotine, flavour, and propyl glycol, which is just a thickening agent. That's a foodstuff.
Glycol, but they also, I read this. It's a report from Canada that came in. They also contain benzene. This is used when used on high power, but the ones that may be introduced will be non-rechargeable, so that will stop fiddling around with the electrics, you know. And it'll also stop trading nicotine patches as well, you know.
Yes.
So yes, it's a little social club really, where you get a few of them together in one cell, young ones mostly, and they all wait for their puff, you know, and then go into dreamland for a minute or so.
Oh, I wouldn't have thought they went into dreamland on nicotine,
you know what I mean? The nicotine hits their system.
I was quite reassured listening to the Home Affairs Minister saying that all these are going to have serial numbers on them and very carefully controlled so that they can't be used as weapons and things, because I think that's part of the trouble about anything in jails, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, they're going to be non-rechargeable, apparently, so there'll be no more fiddling with the sockets.
Yeah, absolutely.
The worry I have, it's so highly boring in there for most people that even non-smokers might be tempted to try the vapors.
Yes.
And come out addicted, you know.
Well, yeah, but
I mean, that's a strong possibility.
It is, yeah, but on the scale of things, and I would suggest that that's probably not the worst thing that can happen if you've been in jail for a spell. But yes, I take your point. All right, some good points there, Andrew. Thank you very much for getting in touch. If you've got a point of view on this, share it with us. 66 13 68. Anne in Sulby says, I can't believe that the prison have only just found out about the teabag thing. My grandson's friend was in there at least 3 years ago and it was happening then. Great security, ? I don't think it's a new thing. I think they've probably known about it for years and years. It's probably been going on ever since the cigarette ban first came in, the tobacco ban first came in. So I don't think it's news this to anybody. It's just that, you know, it's a case of what do we do about it? And it seems to be a reasonably pragmatic approach. Somebody called and said, I'm a smoker, but for heaven's sake, they're in prison for a reason. Would they take beer or wine in for an alcoholic? Well, no, but that's the whole point. I mean, the system that is in place now is that you will not smoke in the prison, but, you know, they're working round it. The prisoners are working round it. Maybe that's another argument, whether or not, you know, anybody caught doing that is in even deeper trouble and has to have the sentence doubled or something. I don't know. 83% of UK tobacco duties and taxes cover the cost of medical treatment costs in the UK. If a complete ban was put on tobacco products, the health service would collapse, putting more people's lives at risk than ever cigarettes did. That's very true. Thank you. Are you sure you're the right person for this programme? Yes, I'm absolutely convinced I'm the right person for this programme. Stu, it seems to me that no matter what you give to people, we're living courtesy of Her Majesty's pleasure. They always find an alternative use for it, says Jane. Yep. It's not the same vaping at work and in prison. Like it or not, prison is their home. You can vape at home, so they should be able to as well, says Margaret. Okay, all right. Well, yes, I understand that point of view. I don't know if I agree with it, but I can understand that point of view. Stu, it amazes me at the extent to which people will distort an argument to find a victim angle. The non-smokers should be commended for coming up with an extrapolation of the e-cigarettes in prison issue into one whereby people who are not in prison are in some way victimised. This is not about government workers in government buildings. These are prisoners, guests of Her Majesty, doing stir. Let's keep the issue within the realms of common sense. All right then. All that aside, is it the place of government to tell or force people into changing their smoking habits just because they're behind bars? Government's making the insides of a person's body their affair. Is this the act of a self-declared liberal society which increasingly acts illiberally? Just some grist for the debate, says Mark. P.S. I can't get the idea of prisoners setting fire to bananas out of my head. This will surely cause some monkeying around. But Tish. Thank you. Okay. Stu, you're correct. Vaping is much safer than smoking by a magnitude of around 1,000. The lie that it is more harmful than tobacco still seems to persist, though. It really is the answer to the health problems for those already addicted. The e-cigarette should be seen as a way of purging society of tobacco smoking for good. That's my view about it, yeah, thank you. Maybe one of the inmates from Jerby Hilton could ring in during the fad break and give us an idea about how they feel about the e-cig thing. Cheers from Dave. Give a criminal an inch and they'll take a mile. It won't take long for them to find a way of abusing the e-cigarette to make it give a bigger kick. Just read up on the internet. It's scary what people can do. That from Paul. Okay. Hi Stu, curious measure of success. Is the smoking ban working? Oh yeah, prisoners only smoke bananas, tea bags and Nicorette patches now, not cigarettes. On the plus side, will this mean prisoners will be able to buy alcohol in prison, as some would say that they're addicted to a pint on a Friday night? That from Sean. No, but I expect that there are people who make hooch or something in the prison out of thing. I mean, that's the whole thing. You can ban smoking, but people have been finding a way around it, and I expect that booze might be the same thing. Certainly if the drama I watch on TV is anything to go by. Just a quick question, how do the prisoners like the cigarettes? Well, it sounds as though they're shorting out the mains, the electrics, and that's why they're getting power outages in the cells. They're trying to create sparks from the electrics, I think. I don't think there should be outages in the prison. If they could light the bananas or tea bags, take the lighters and matches away, problem solved, says Jackie. Were it only so simple, Jackie. It's always been a tactic to leave some free reign of drugs and other things to keep the peace in jails. Yeah, I've heard that before. Just like why Jeremy Kyle type programmes are on in the mornings to keep the headballs off the streets for a while, so I believe. I think you might have two good points there. If you break the law and go to prison, you forfeit the right to smoke. Get a grip. Liberals, says Marty. There's no proven research to say nicotine is harmless. It constricts blood vessels and raises blood fat levels. All right. I think vape cigs are the least of the problem in prison compared to some of the other substances kicking around. That from Ruby. Thank you, Ruby. Evidence that the plastic casing can be worked and shaped into a sharp weapon. Yeah, but they're all serial numbers, and I think that they've probably got that in mind. And the minister did say they couldn't be used as weapons. Stu, what happens when a few years down the road e-cigs are dangerous? Q, a line of ex-lags taking the government to court for a payout. Ex-US soldiers took the USA to court about being given cigarettes, and also because the free Hershey bars made them fat. It's a crazy world out there, isn't it? The electric plugs should be made tamper-proof. I don't know that they've got electric plugs. So I don't know. It might be they might be undoing the light switches or the light fittings. Who knows? The electric plug should be made tamper-proof so that the ban can be imposed. After all, life in prison should include a measure of deterrence. Grouty will be turning in his grave. Sneller should be issued in the nick. Not sure what language that is. Well, it's obviously jail language. Tax argument and fags doesn't hold up about the NHS collapsing. Government have millions of ways of getting the money out of us to replace ones that have dried up. Also, do you mean that the prisoners who might ring in will ring during the break from the fag break, says Mark. I don't know.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should all options be considered when it comes to the future of the old courthouse in Ramsey? All options. An MHK for the town says he's sure the town's courthouse won't just be sold to the highest bidder. Dr Alex Allinson is a member of the Department of Home Affairs, which last week put it on the market for £475,000. People of Ramsey want the iconic building retained in public ownership, yet the department last week said it was for sale. Commissioners will this evening consider making a bid for the facility. Dr Allinson says whether it ends up in public or private ownership, there's a genuine will to ensure the best outcome for the people of Ramsey. What do you think about this? Should absolutely all options be considered when it comes to the future of the old courthouse in Ramsey? Or would that just waste even more time? Lots of comments about this. The politicians are getting it in the neck. Hey boy, if Peter's going to scrap Onken commissioners, can he be really green in saving fuel by taking Ramsey's with him to the tip? From Frank. Thank you, Frank. Well, the thing is, if there weren't Ramsey commissioners, Frank, then you'd have no purpose in life. So, they keep you young, really, moaning about Ramsey commissioners. I'm afraid to say I think Dr Allinson, MHK for Ramsey, has been taken in by the system. I had big hopes of him. Very disappointed. Really nice guy. Maybe he's bit off more than he can chew. Well, you've got to remember that he's a member of the Department of Home Affairs, who are the people charged with selling it. So, he is to an extent being expected to sit on both sides of this sort of debate, if you like, government and Ramsey commissioners, as the Ramsey MHK is supposed to be representing the people of Ramsey. So, surely you've got to feel sorry for the fact that he's got a foot in both camps. It must be difficult for him. because everybody in Ramsey saying, he's sold out, he's government now, he doesn't care about us anymore. I suspect that he does very much so, but, there's got to be a limit to what he can do if he's a member of the department that's trying to sell the building. Stu, Ramsey Post Office was a done deal before the post office went. It'll be sold. That's from Harry in Ramsey. Seems to have inside info on that. Hey boy, maybe the 3 former MHKs who were the instigators in the town's degeneration plan could come forward and tell the people what was the original idea for the courthouse, or was that decision left to the architects and scheme planners? I mean, you surely wouldn't fritter away pointless millions of taxpayers' money without having a clue, would you? Or would you? It wouldn't be the first time, would it, says Frank. Reason the MHK, Mr Malarkey won't turn up for, Minister Malarkey won't turn up for Friday night's Ramsey Town meeting is he knows he'll get lynched. More of the same lies. There should be in place a vote of no confidence that the voters can use to get rid of MHKs, says Craig. What a depressingly bland statement from Alex Allinson, disillusioned Ramsey voter. Just listen to Dr. Allinson on the radio about the courthouse. Now he's been put in by the people in the north. He's turned into a typical MHK sitting on the fence. Well, can you not understand why? That's right, seat on the fence. He'll only get 1 term, says somebody else who would be a politician. Frank's right, Ramsey Commission is a waste of space unless it suits them. That's from Paul in Ramsey. Who'd be a commissioner, even worse, because you don't even get paid for the abuse, I don't think. Courthouse area is a beautiful area, says Liz, and it should belong to Ramsey Commissioners. Keep it out of private hands at all costs. Just look at the example of the beautiful town square area in Douglas. I'd rather not. It's been a disaster from the start, says Liz. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, they've tried, but it's privately owned, and that's the excuse given for the fact that it's been a disaster from the start. There are heritage groups in the north putting on displays using the town hall, but the old courthouse would be perfect. Surely there could be a deal, half purchase, half rent, or a low-cost loan, says Liz. Hey, boy, this is from Frank. If Doc Allinson gets the boot at the next election, at least it'll help out with the shortage of GPs. Good thinking, Frank, yeah. Craig is right, we need to be able to vote no confidence and get them out before they do a term and work for their own retirement package. Allinson needs to grow a pair and stand up for those who put the faith in him, says Jamie. Isn't it strange? Don't people get extreme about things that they sort of disagree about? Is it really that important, Jamie, that you'd want somebody to be fired for it? If the courthouse was in Pulley, the pub application would already be in, says somebody else. What else? Dr. Allinson can resign from Home Affairs and stand up for Ramsey, says Mickey. Yes, I suppose so. You might think that he's able to achieve more of his political aspirations as member of a department. But yes, you're absolutely right, Mickey. That is an option, I suppose. And we've got John on the line. Hello, John.
I understand that Dr. Allison is very highly thought of in Ramsey from a medical point of view.
Yes.
But I would have thought in this situation he should back off because it's a perfect example of conflict of interest.
Well, I think he was. I think that was maybe his hope. I don't know. I don't know the chap, but I've met him a couple of times, but that's all. But maybe that's why he's not commented on this previously. But so many people have been on this programme saying, why don't we hear from the MHK about this? What about Dr. Allinson?
They're obviously not looking at it from the point of view of conflict of interest.
No, but that's the worry about these things,
He can't win. He's on a no-win situation.
Correct.
So I would have thought, he'd be far better off just backing off this altogether. And I think the majority of people would understand that.
I'm not convinced. You see, if he says, I'm going to recuse myself from any debate on this because I'm a member of the department that's trying to sell the building, even though I'm a Ramsey MHK, I think people say, it's us that voted him in. It's us that he should be listening. He's on a hiding to nothing, whatever.
Depends how much pressure Mr. Malarkey puts on him.
Well, I don't know. All right, John, thank you very much for your call. Let's go to line 3, and we've got Quirky on. Hi, David.
Same sort of thing, conflicts of interest. The issue here is, don't forget now, the building is in public ownership, which is under the taxpayer, which is technically owned by Treasury.
Yeah.
Treasury, if the building's sold, all the money goes to Treasury to go back into the pie to be split round the corner. So I would say to you, if anybody attended, like the Treasury Minister or anybody in Treasury, they've got to have a conflict of interest then. Because they're actually, if they make a decision up there. And the other issue I'd bring it to the fore is, if then the person or whoever sells it then sells it under value, and we know what the estimated value of the property is,
yes.
It's 470. if you sell it cheaper to somebody,
then everybody outside Ramsey could feel aggrieved by that.
and I would feel one of them,
Yeah.
and then we could say, well, I want all those persons who made that decision surcharged.
Yeah.
Like they do. Well, you can do that. It's perfectly legitimate way of doing something. If you sell an asset, it's like a private limited company. If you sell something undervalued to a friend or a colleague, a car or something like that, for a couple of grand instead of $4,000.
Yeah, but this is different. I mean, this is the people of Ramsey, isn't it? We're not talking about a dodgy deal that's done for a chum.
It doesn't make any difference, because the problem you've got is, you see, everything's really now out in the open. We've got the value of the asset. We know how much the commissioners are going to pay.
So when Douglas Corpy sold the Villa Marina to the government for £1...
No, they didn't sell it.
Oh.
The different way around was with government, God bless them all, is when they need it as a national asset, they use the compulsory purchase powers, right? And they got the villa for £1 or something like that, which was fair. They got the bus station, which they've never done nothing on. And with the biggest asset we got, and I'll let people rest on this one, is the National Sports Centre. When we did the 3G pitch down for football there, right, I remember Tony Brown coming to some of the politicians and said, look, the corporation are not playing ball here. How do you fancy doing something? And I said to Tony Brown at the time, and I don't think he'd mind me saying it is, why don't we compulsory purchase it? And that's what we did. And look at the asset you've got there now.
Okay, all right. So if you were involved in it, it was all right because it was a CPO and it was for the national interest. If it was to happen in Ramsey, then everybody gets surcharged for selling it on the cheap.
No. If there's an issue, everything's out in the public domain now, and as sure as we don't have that no win, no claim. Claim no win.
Yeah, no win, no fee, yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if you're selling something that belongs to everybody on the island, every woman and child has an interest in that, to it. And if that then money comes in and the Treasury Minister, in this case Mr Cannon, wants another 400,000 to go to the hospital for operations and stuff like that, I know where my money would want to go.
All right, fair dues. Thank you very much for calling, David. More comments. You missed the point, Stu. If there was no confidence clause, they would have to actually do something. Most stick their heads in the sand. Stu recently done some remedial works in Ramsey Courthouse, and it's going to take several hundreds of thousands to bring it up to a decent state. This is interesting. Fact is, the building's well past its sell-by date. The offer Ramsey commissioners have made malarkey should snatch their hands off. Fact. That's not from Frank, that's from somebody else. Ramsey Courthouse, why not knock it down and make a car park? That's been the norm for iconic buildings in Ramsey, says Richard, cynic. Just when you thought the courthouse story was nearly over, we find the government selling it. This Albert Road plot has been sold, but nothing is happening there. The government yard near to the wildlife park has been sold, nothing happening. So I guess the same will happen with the courthouse. Surely Ramsey needs something to happen quickly. So if Ramsey commissioners take it on, then they need to turn it around quick. What needs to be remembered is whatever it becomes needs planning permission. So will Ramsey commissioners give permission for it to become the new nightlife or another pub in Ramsey? I hope not. They surely would think of Ramsey then. Come on, Ramsey, make it happen. That from John. Good. Okay. Tell you what, Manx voters, don't forget, next election you're out. Ask your mate Quirk. Okay. Try to look out for taxpayers and ratepayers doesn't wash with me. All the wasted money on dependability, consultants for the promenade, etc. They should give it back to the Ramsey Town Commissioners for nothing. We've already paid for it, says Elaine. Doc Allinson, no conflict of interest at all. The people of Ramsey put the man there to represent their interests. That's it. If the department don't like it, they can get rid of him. The people of Ramsey can't do likewise, can they? That from Chris.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Is an increase in the minimum wage needed? The island's minimum wage could go up, but still no hint of a national living wage as seen in the UK. The Department of Economic Development insists that's a work in progress, but proposals to raise the minimum wage across all age bands will go before Tynwald next week. If accepted, businesses will have a 2-month grace period to adapt before the changes come in on the 1st of June. Are changes to the minimum wage needed, or could it put too much pressure on employers? Could it actually help to boost inflation by people having to put prices up to pay for it? I noticed that people over 25, it's going to go up from £7, or proposal is to go up from £7 to £7.50. That's 7.1%. when most people are getting no increase at all, or very little. So do you think it's affordable? Do you think it can work? Stu, you've hinted before that you think the current minimum wage is fine, but you try surviving on this. No, I have done. I have survived on actually less than the minimum wage years ago. Yes, we know the Eastern Bloc workers do, but this is not living, just surviving in rundown shared accommodation. This has reduced everybody's standard of living. There has to be a balance. Presently, people on low wages are claiming benefits from the system. That is a cost too that government subsidise. Where do you draw the line? Okay. Stu, no, I've decided I'm going to stick to my $2.50 and not increase my wage. That's $2.50 a day, not an hour. Anything to help my lovely employer. Oh, yes, that's me. I'm off to polish my halo. Anyone fancy a sherbet lemon on me? Regards from Nick at the sweet shop. Thank you, Nick. Let's go to the lines and have a word with Neil. Hello, Neil.
I think it's important to acknowledge that the people who tend to be on the very lowest rates of pay are the most vulnerable within society. I think that's the first point I'd like to make. Secondly, I think that nobody wants to put business under enormous pressure that they can't make a profit. At the end of the day, businesses have to be successful in order to reinvest within their company and obviously keep their staff on board and hopefully take on even more staff as they expand. Yeah. However, I think as a society, we expect our food in particular and our services for too low a price. I look at the UK as a prime example in the dairy industry and the meat industry over there, and the large corporations such as Tesco, etc. They're actually forcing the producers to produce their food. They're actually giving them less than the cost of production. So, yeah. I mean, they're squeezing people to death. So there does have to be a balance.
Yeah. That's the problem with it. And I mean, yes, you're right. I saw a programme years and years ago, which one always presumes that the producers go to the big supermarkets and say, this is what I've got to sell and this is the price. And it's not like that. The supermarkets go to them and say, will you produce, item X for this amount of money? Yeah. And because it's usually a huge order, people are very loath to turn it down, but to try and make a profit out of it is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you're running your small business up there with the coffee. You know how much it costs to produce a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or whatever.
You see, the thing is that people will say, Neil, oh, well, it's all right for you if you own a business. You can just put your prices up. You can't necessarily. There's a going price for most things, and coffee is a perfect example. There's a going rate for a cappuccino or a latte or whatever. So you can't just, unless everybody puts the prices up at the same time. But what that means is that the consumer gets it in the neck then.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is it's the consumers that are at fault, because the consumers in general expect everything for absolutely nothing, and there has to be fairness. I mean, if you have to give, say, your staff up there an extra 50p or pound an hour or whatever it is, then you have to justify that by passing that on to the customer, and the customer has to accept that if we want to support the most vulnerable sector of society, we as a whole have to be prepared to pay a little bit more for our goods. I think it's as simple as that, to be honest.
I think you might be I think you might be right. The only question is whether or not society is ready, because everybody wants the best quality at the lowest price all the time, don't they? So, that's a huge change to get people to accept some sort of social responsibility as consumers.
Yes, it is, but it can work. I mean, I look now at the Fair Trade Organisation, how successful that's becoming. I mean, even 15 years ago, people hadn't even heard of fair trade. It was a niche little thing on the sideline. People now are thinking more responsibly about where they source their food from, where the real costs of production are being paid to the person who's on the ground floor, the farm labourer, etc., or the person in the shop. And I think the problem is the large corporations who are using food and services in particular as a throwaway to lure people in and then sting them with other products which they don't realise they're being stung for.
But even things like fair trade, and I'm not an expert at it, but I mean I have read reports in various papers over the years that say that that's all very well, but if you've got an area, a fairly poor area where fair trade is established somewhere, the people who aren't part of the scheme then can't compete. And so, something that's set out with all the best intentions is actually driving people into poverty that are not part of the scheme or for whatever reason can't be a part of the scheme.
Well, there is that aspect of it, I agree, and that's why if you look at the Italian wine producers, they're forming large sort of cooperative organisations, so they get a fair price accumulatively as a group. But no, I think society just has to change its ideas on fairness, on pricing, etc., etc. I mean, nobody wants to squeeze a small retailer and put them out of business. That's the last thing we want to do. But fairness to the poorest in society, I think, is a prerequisite on this one.
All right. Okay? Good to talk to you, Neil. Thank you very much for getting in touch. Graham says, minimum wage, hey boy, if the minimum wage is too little, it'll encourage people to go on and stay on the dole, says G. Well, that just shouldn't be allowed. I mean, that's a different thing altogether, isn't it? It's a starting wage, but employers, some exploit it, and workers. Just think, Stu, that extra £20 a week that people will get may well be getting spent in the very places that we're going to moan about having to give the staff a pay rise. I don't think it'll work. A 7.5% pay rise it may be, but it's getting paid on 12.5 grand, not 30,000, says Josh. All right. Yeah, that's a fair comment, I suppose. But it's still a big percentage, isn't it, compared to everybody else? Stu, if minimum wage goes up, then my wage must go up too. Otherwise, as a skilled man, why should I bother to train, says Robbie. Well, that's a very good point, I think, Robbie. I'm quite happy to take that one on board. Speaking of the lowest paid, I was asked whether or not I earn $7.50 an hour. Yes, I do. Which is a technical answer. Stuart, speaking of the lowest paid people, we pensioners didn't get a 7.5% rise, says Jack. No. You constantly quote the cost of living is higher in the Isle of Man, but never refer to higher tax rates in the UK. No, I do. I've often said that everything in life is a balance, and the fact that we get we pay lower taxes in the Isle of Man is offset by the higher cost of living generally. So I think it swings and roundabouts, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than the Isle of Man. So I'm not trying to make a point about it, but to say that the rate's gone up to $7.50 in the UK, so we're going to make it $7.50 in the Isle of Man to remain competitive, I don't quite get that. But I am fairly thick at times, so maybe that's what it's all about. A good employer looking for long-term gain, not just short-term profit, will pay this. Don't forget this was brought in to protect us from cheap labour and wages not dropping below a set level where you can't live, and it is not, and I repeat, not a pay rise. It's not a pay rise. How do you get that at all? If somebody's employed for 40 hours a week on £7 an hour and the rate goes up to £7.50 an hour, then that's a 20 quid a week pay rise, isn't it? Or am I missing something? I mean, the whole argument about whether or not it's enough is different completely. Previous caller, this isn't a pay rise, it's a safeguard against too low wages. There's a difference. It's bringing certain age groups up to the same level as other workers. Well, I can't see it as being anything other than a pay rise. Now, it might be a necessary pay rise, and it might set a reasonable minimum and all the rest of it, but it is more money for the same work, really. Stu, with regards to 0 hours contracts, there are 1,000 people on 0 hours contracts in the hospital alone, and that's not including social care, and most of these people are working at least full-time hours. That from Jeff. Well, that kind of bears out the story, doesn't it? Minimum wage, if the minimum wage is going up, companies and shops might start employing the school-aged children again. I think that they could be paid $5.40. A big difference. Loving the show. Lovely. Thank you very much for getting in touch. It's going up to $5.70 though. But even so, you're right. It is a big saving, and it's maybe something that people can do. My point was that they're being paid below a living wage because there's no enforcement, so they fell below the poverty level. No one should go to work and be unable to pay basic bills. No, I agree with that. I understand what you're trying to say on that, but £280 a week, all right. You're not going to be able to afford any luxuries, certainly, and it would be a complete stretch. But not everybody is having to exist on that on its own. A lot of people are married or in partnerships where they've got a partner who's bringing money in as well. And there has got to be a starting point for people. Not everybody can go in as middle management. There's got to be a starting point for people without any real skills or talents to reflect the fact that they've got to be trained up and made useful in the job.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should those in retirement be entitled to free travel on the heritage railways in the Isle of Man? There's no compelling case for pensioners on the island to have free train and tram travel reinstated. That's the view of a Tynwald Select Committee. It had been tasked with reviewing a petition for redress, asking for the concession to be reintroduced. After hearing evidence from a number of people, the committee has released a report with a single recommendation for Tynwald. Ewan Gorn reports.
Two members of the Manx Labour Party, Lynn Surderfield and Carol Quine, who presented the petition, both gave evidence to the committee. They claim heritage transport offers cultural benefits to senior citizens, especially those taking grandchildren on journeys. They also add this brings benefits to the local economy. The committee's report, however, concludes that this kind of travel is a leisure activity and not essential public transport. The petitioners argue it was a social injustice to revoke the concession and is costly for those on limited income. Currently, an annual pass for pensioners to have unlimited use of the three railways costs £37.50. The committee consider the current fares to be reasonable and say bringing back the concession would not address wider problems of social welfare needs. Overall, it found the case not strong enough to reverse the decision. It will, however, recommend that Tynwald should consider offering an advanced purchase discount on passes for trains and trams, but not for the Snaefell Mountain Railway.
Ewan Gorn reporting. What do you think about it? Do you agree with committee's conclusions? Or do you not? Get in touch and tell us. 66 13 68. Should pensioners get free travel on the trams and railways or not? And I suppose it's like, just because somebody's a pensioner, it is a mirror of society as a whole, really, in that there are people who are pensioners who've got plenty of money. They don't need any help. And there are people on pensions with very little money. But like I say, that's a reflection of society as a whole, probably. So is this just a leisure activity or is it important to people? Yes, they should, says one contributor, but they should also reinstate free travel permits for unemployed people to help them go for interviews, which they stopped at the same time they CV benefits. Well, I'm not quite sure about the end of it, but okay. Story of my life, Stu. Every time I come within a whisker of a benefit of getting old and decrepit, they kick it away. At this rate, I'll have to be 105 before I can retire, and even then I won't need travel. On a serious note, yes, they should have free travel to get them out and about, spending money in shops and cafes, and the money moving around short-term saving and getting rid of bus passes. That from Jan. I understand the feeling, yeah. The goalposts change every time you get near it, don't they? I can't believe the government seems hell-bent on making the island less and less an attractive proposition to live here. Most countries around the UK have concessionary travel. For such a wealthy nation with a small population, we're becoming increasingly mean-spirited and callous. Stuart, Jack again. We already have free buses, and I think that's fair. Stu, again, when we moved to the island 7 years ago, I got a residence pass for the railways, which was £25. It's now £75, a 200% increase. I wouldn't be able to afford that now. I think they should rethink the prices for everybody, pensioners included. Regards from Nick. Thanks, Nick. Surely passes for trains help get pensioners out, and spending grey money seems popular, I believe. Helps other towns as well. Plus, lots would take the grandchildren. More spending. I won't use them. Done that unless I get grandkids to show them. That from Billy. I can't understand why it needed a select committee to run up a cost to look into this, as Tynwald could have decided this instead of voting in the committee to do it. Well, yes, except that politicians are fairly fickle and they quite like to have a third party to blame. Oh, well, no, it wasn't me that said that you shouldn't get the free passes. It was a Tynwald Select Committee. It sort of independently validates things, doesn't it, if you get a select committee or consultants. I'm convinced that's one of the reasons that we seem to spend fortunes on consultants. Oh, no, it wasn't me. I wasn't the one who said that we shouldn't do that. It was the consultants. Very expensive consultants came along and said we shouldn't do it or whatever. Maybe I'm a cynic, I don't know. Let's go to the lines and see what Buster makes of this. Hello, Buster.
Yeah, I mean, people who've worked here all their lives get to 65, the pension isn't gold-plated for the vast majority of people, and the free pass on the trains and that, bar for where they are running at peak times. If they're running at peak times, then no. But outside those peak times, then yes, let the elderly be able to go round to Ramsey, and because you got to remember that a lot of these people, even though they've been driving all their lives, don't like going for long drives to Ramsey and etc. etc.
Well, they can catch a free bus, can't they?
Yeah, they can catch a free bus, but equally, isn't it better to see a tram running with people on it than to be running with nobody on it?
I take your point, yeah. Yeah.
You know,
But the question is, you've got to draw the line. I think that the important thing in this report is that this was seen to be a leisure activity and not essential public transport. So where do you draw the line with leisure activities? Should pensioners be able to go into the Villa Marina free? Should they be able to go to the cinema free? Should they get free beer? You know what I mean? There's got to be a line, hasn't there?
Well, I mean, you're right. And basically, I mean, I don't really understand why they needed the committee to tell them this. But it would make sense for government to actually say, right, okay, we're going to look and assess what benefits we can give to the over 65s and, you know, put together a bundle so people know where they are, the government know where they are, and we're not dealing with all these things ad hoc when people's temperature goes rocketing through the roof.
All right, Buster, thank you for your call. I expect that a lot of the pensioners' sort of charities do that kind of thing, information about what you're entitled to. So I don't know. Free travel on trams or trains for pensioners? No, it's not and can't be interpreted as essential travel. I've always believed that even the bus service should not be totally free. Let's say a nominal yearly fee of £52 a week when you use the bus. Not a lot of money for the coffers, but it has to be better than nothing, says Ray. No doubt the members of this committee have nice fat private pensions and will never have to exist on the state pension. Free buses are okay, but can get boring. Oh, I'm sorry about that. And a train trip occasionally would be nice, but it's unaffordable to many of us. Okay, well, if you find the free bus boring, then you'll have to save up, I suppose. Stu, the state pension at the moment is £177.44 a week. Compare this to a minimum wage, it works out at £4.44 an hour, 40-hour week. Surely the pension should be the same as the minimum wage multiplied by 40, says Peter the pensioner. I'd have to go sort of glass half full on that one, Peter, and I'd have to say, well, actually, I'm only working 20 hours a week, or I'm only not working 20 hours a week, so I'm being paid £8.88 an hour for that, for not working. That's maybe just me, I don't know. Maria called, I don't think free travel is necessary on the railways as long as they get a free bus pass. Most pensioners can well afford it. I'm not bothered about the train anymore, but if I had people over, we'd go on it and we'd pay. Bus pass is more important for doing things like getting to the shops. The train isn't any use for that. Pensioners get quite a lot of concessions on the island, so they can pay for the rail travel. The most important issue is the increase in the water rate, and that a single person pays the same as a large family. Yep, absolutely. Stu, I think it's the least the government can do to give pensioners free tram and train travel, especially if they're looking after grandchildren, which the vast majority do, says Anne. Bus passes, this is from Michael. I think Manx Radio should not be doing these kind of opinion talks, as it's just fueling what's in the national press. Every time you pick a paper up, it's a division between the older persons and the you generation. This is not the first time Manx Radio have done this. Surely you can find a more important issue. Disappointed. What? What are you talking about, Michael? This is a local issue. This is an important issue to a lot of people. And you think that we're guilty of being divisive? What colour's the sky in your world? Say, boy, unless you're an MHK or an MLC, it seems to be a crime to be a pensioner nowadays. Facts from Frank. No, it's not a fact at all, Frank. With regards to it being a leisure activity, this is true, but I was watching a family with visitors going on the mountain railway, one of whom was a resident and got it free. For the rest of them, it cost £60 from Laxey to Snaefell. The look of shock on the faces was a sight to behold. Yeah, I'm sure it was. And the gentleman visitor made it quite plain that they wouldn't be spending anything in shops, etc. for a few days, but if the resident hadn't had it free, they wouldn't have gone in the first place. Well, I think I mentioned it was last year or the year before when I had grandchildren over. And I thought, I know, we'll take them on the horse trams. We'll be talking about that on the programme, and it's a long time since it's been on there. It would cost a fortune. I thought it was going to be about 10 bob end to end return for each of us. I think it cost about £20 to take some grandchildren on the horse tram. Only goes 500 yards. Well, one MHK said he couldn't manage on less than 50 grand, so how many pensioners are on that kind of money? Well, hang on a minute, there's a difference between somebody working and somebody who's a pensioner, surely. Stu, absolutely not. We have some very wealthy pensioners on this island. They're not paying for TV licences, they've free bus passes, want free travel. What next? No young people returning, others leaving. Soon we'll have an island full of pensioners paying for nout. Right then. Strong words indeed.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or you can get your thoughts to us via Facebook or Twitter using the hashtag MRTalkingHeads. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, why not suggest it by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.